We all start our Minecraft world the same way, with nothing, but it's what you do after that that makes your world unique. I've survived 1,000 days in my survival world, and I'm going to show you how I turned a world like this into a world like this. I hope to inspire you with this video, so please enjoy. My name is Pineapple Man, but you can call me Penny, and thank you for joining me in episode 10 of my survival series. If you've never seen my survival series, you're in luck because today's episode is a recap of my first 1,000 days in this world, so stay tuned if that sounds interesting to you. And please consider leaving a comment if you found this video interesting. I really enjoy interacting with the community. And so I figured it was most logical to go in episode order. The clips we're watching from episode 1 is my journey to a nearby village. I lovingly refer to this place as the Villy. Apologies in advance because I'm going to interlace some audio from the original clips, which at times will sound kinda weird. Couple days. Just been tidying my stuff up. Look at this, I even redesigned the village. Oh wow, a kid just grew up. There's actually a ruin portal in the village. It needs 3 obsidian. And so I spent a ton of time in and around the village preparing to fight the Ender Dragon. My main plan was to use a flying machine to fly all the way out to the Outer End Islands and obtain an elytra before the Ender Dragon fight. So I used the villagers to get a Silk Touch book and cobble together a goofy little bee farm so we could get this done. Just a few hours later, and I had all the materials I wanted to do the dragon fight. And so I set off looking for the stronghold, and we entered the end. And so I sprang to action and built the flying machine as fast as I could, because I knew I needed to avoid the dragon's fireballs. But somehow I managed to make it out with just enough time to spare. And so I leisurely rode the flying machine out to the Outer End Islands and repositioned it as necessary. Then I found my first end city when this happened. Okay, right here we're gonna aggro. 16 blocks I think is the aggro range. Group aggro. So after narrowly avoiding death, I spent another hour or so looking for the elytra and found one. I used the elytra to loot some more end cities and to find a gateway so I could return to the main end island and defeat the dragon. And so I made it back to the Villy and explained my idea for the Science Plaza, which was going to be a location where we stored mementos from experiments. And I concluded episode 1 by discussing my plans for episode 2. Hey, speaking of episode 2, I wanted to start off strong in episode 2 by constructing the 3 farms that every player needs. So I started with an iron farm, moved on to a general mob farm, and then finished on the Enderman farm. In my opinion, these are the 3 best starter farms that you should have up and running as soon as possible in your world. And I do recognize that not everybody likes to play like this, but personally, I think that these farms provide necessary resources to get into the end game properly. And with the Enderman farm up and running, I wasted no time getting a decent set of netherite gear together. The TNT from the general mob farm was really helpful for finding all the debris, and when the dust settled, we were looking pretty good. And at the end of episode 2, I discussed my plan to obtain illegal armor due to a bug or oversight. In past versions of Minecraft, tools, armors, and weapons would break when they reached -1 durability, meaning that the durability screen would show 0 before they broke instead of 1. Nowadays, the behavior is a little bit more intuitive, but this oversight means that mobs can still drop weapons, armor, and tools with 0 durability. Mojang Studios has marked this on the bug tracker as a will not fix, so this is presumably a permanent feature. With episode 2 out of the way, I decided that it was time to move out of the Villy in episode 3 to set up the main base area. And if you remember my idea for the Science Plaza, I decided to lean heavily into that and simply focus on that as a main base area. So I packed up all my junk from in the Villy and rode the flying machine from episode 1 over to our new home. I spent a ton of time in and around the area, collecting materials and preparing for this episode's main build, which is actually a wood farm. In that episode, I took down a wither and just cleared out this area to start the wood farm in. You can check out episode 3 if you want to learn more about the wood farm. But the decoration for this build is actually critically important to our world's history, as I introduced the lore for the Science Plaza, which is essentially an abandoned laboratory or research facility. Now, I do clarify that not every build has to conform to these standards, and for the most part, the Science Plaza is just supposed to be fun. But one of the main themes that I establish here is the structures being left to time and taken over by nature, which I personally just find really fascinating. I cannot overstate how helpful it was to have a wood farm this early in the game, so this is definitely a big recommendation from me. Anyways, I also revealed that not only was this wood farm constructed to farm wood for my personal use, but also so I could use it in villager trading. And then I took some time to discuss some of my favorite villager trades, so check out episode 3 if you want to see that. But I cobbled together a little villager trading hall, and spent the rest of the episode trading away my sticks. All those emeralds and some resource collection between episodes went towards episode 4's big building project, which is our central storage location known as the Origin. Not only is its name an epic math reference, but it's also a reference to how the building is centrally located in Science Plaza. This is by design because I wanted it to sort of be an icon of the area. I really like how it turned out, and throughout the time lapse I gave some building tips. But of course those frog lights didn't come from nowhere, so I showed off the frog light farm that I had built previously. This has to be one of my new favorite farms. They're so easy to build and produce tons of drops. After the construction of the Origin, it was time to get into this episode's science experiment, which was less of a science experiment and more of a social experiment. The plan was to construct a completely white map and allow viewers to suggest pixel art and other things to put on the map. So, if you made it this far, go ahead and drop a suggestion in the comment. And remember that science is whatever we want it to be. And so I put together a goofy little MS Paint UI and allowed viewers to suggest what they'd like to have put on. I wanted to start episode 5 strong by making one of the most feared farms in my opinion, which is the Shulker farm. So I got acquainted with this nice little fellow I called Ryan. So I explained a bit how Shulker farming worked in a general sense and built a quick and dirty little duplication platform, so I could have some backup Ryans just in case. And so I designed this Shulker farm with sustainability in mind, but it's not very efficient. That's okay because I don't need a ton of Shulker shells. This farm utilizes an interesting mechanic between Shulkers and scaffolding. So far it's produced more than enough Shulker shells for my needs, and synergizes well with the wood farm, even though it is kinda Uggo mode. But I really needed to get properly moved into the Origin, so I spent a bunch of time building an interesting bulk storage area below the upper roof deck, which is where we're going to store most of our items. So I spent some time discussing some of my design decisions, including a drop chute from the upper roof level down to the bulk storage area, which has been really convenient. I'm trying to make a conscious decision to connect things up as much as possible. A little bit of off-camera building later, and I had a corridor all the way up to the upper roof storage area, which I decided to design like shop stalls or just a general living space. Because another element I wanted to include in the lore is that the Science Plaza has been abandoned to time, but at some point people may have re-inhabited the area. So this is why you'll see some structures that look kind of improvised or ramshackle. The storage area really has been serving me well. You'll notice that the items aren't sorted by item type, but are instead sorted into sort of categories. And this is certainly a more manual process than I'd like, but it has been working when I have the willpower. Most of the time, I'll leave out my shulker boxes in the central area to be sorted out later. Part of this episode also included a Trident Science section, where I played around with some of the interesting game mechanics of Tridents. It was a lot of fun. This is also where I made the relatively bold claim that the Trident could help with your inventory issues. If you like having a bow and arrow or a ranged weapon, you can get rid of your bow, arrow, and sword and replace it with a Trident, effectively gaining 2 inventory spaces. Of course, what you gain in convenience you lose in DPS and the looting enchantment. However, I'd argue that you don't really need the looting enchantment until you're at your farms. I've been using the Trident like this ever since and definitely recommend. So I started off episode 6 with a tropical fish farm speed build, and took some time to discuss the mechanics behind tropical fish spawning that I don't think enough players appreciate or understand. If you factor each selection criterion, you end up with a chance of 1 in 30,720 tropical fish spawns per rare tropical fish. Check out episode 6 if you want to see more. The remainder of episode 6 was spent upgrading the interior of the origin and building a new structure. Inside I got a sugarcane farm in, a wool farm, and a bee farm. And then I finished everything off with a little concrete breaker. The new structure I added to Science Plaza served to connect the origin to other locations, and I took to calling this a Sky Junction. To wrap up the episode, I made a machine I like to call the Quest Machine, which is pretty much just a dropper with tasks in it for whenever I need a little something to do. I also asked for quest suggestions in the comments. This marked the end for episode 6, and episode 7 was all about armor enchantments, specifically the main 4 protection enchantments, and I'm not going to go into all the detail, but I have cut together some of the deaths and funny moments. And since last episode's creeper mishap, I don't really care about my death count anymore, so I wanted to take some time to talk about fall damage and the feather falling enchantment. Here I'm demonstrating that armor does not block fall damage. Let's have a look. Right. And what do we think is going to happen? Obviously, we're going to die. Here we go. Oh, yeah, baby. It's a charged creeper, right? We're going to die. Right? Unless. JK, unless. Hello.
Hello there.
Yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed those clips. Some of you may have actually found my channel from that. Anyways, we also in this episode took on a raid, and it was kind of funny. Just played and prepared for a battle that I would surely win. Through a combination of strength, determination, and science, I successfully got all the villagers killed. Yikes. My bad, guys. Despite my raid failure, I finished off episode 7 strong with this oculary build, which I pronounced wrong for the entirety of the video, which contains a moss farm. If you've ever played Skyrim, this build was inspired by the oculary in the ruins of Mazulf. And although it's not that big, it was pretty annoying to build because of the multiplanar circles and generally awkward shapes. But I really like how it turned out, and I think it's become an icon for the area. So do check out episode 7 if you're interested in the lore of why a mechanism like this would be in a society that had clearly reached the digital age. Kinda cringe. I wrapped up episode 7 by showing off the moss drops. And so I started off episode 8 with a Hoglin farm speed build, and just showed off the drops. It was a quick and dirty farm, but it really did the trick. But the main star of this episode was these 2 spawners that would supply a zombie army that I was putting together for a future arena project. So I was faced with the challenge of having to sort out zombies that can hold items with zombies that can't hold items, because we want to be able to give the zombies armor and weapons. This is because we'll be pitting the zombies against golems and wardens, so we want them to have a fighting chance. For the spawner room, I decided to go with sort of a dingy dungeon vibe, with a turtle egg in the center to lure the zombies in. It seemed to work okay, but there was some pathfinding issues. But it didn't really seem to matter because these 2 spawners supplied more than enough zombies for our project. I decorated a little bit more down here, and then created a funnel to transport the zombies up to the surface. You can see the system in action here. Check out episode 8 if you want to see more details, but I got a sorting system in place that could sort out zombies that could hold items and zombies that couldn't hold items. And it turned out pretty good. The challenge, of course, was trying to make an episode revolving around a singular redstone contraption interesting, but I actually think it turned out pretty good. The final task for episode 8 was to decorate the thing, and I decided to go with an old factory look, which I think turned out okay. And the last episode I'll be recapping is episode 9. I started this episode by showcasing a rather embarrassing problem, and that was that I was out of cobblestone. This is a problem because I like to do redstone contraptions and you need a ton of that stuff. So I felt that I should feed 2 chickens with 1 wheat seed and show off the TNT duplicating module while also using the thing to farm up a little cobble. And surprise, surprise, it did not go to plan. Check this out. And oh no. I'm so sorry. Oh, I just killed my boys. Yeah, so I accidentally killed some of my charged creepers. But that's okay because it made for a good segue into the cobblestone farm build, which turned out really interesting, I think. I used a mechanic where the TNT is launched across soul sand water elevators and then yeeted over a path, which made for a really cool effect. In a time lapse, I decorated the thing to kind of look like a miscellaneous computer component, because I really wanted to show off the cool TNT flying around. I AFK'd here for about 2 hours and had tons of cobblestone to show for it. Perfect timing because in this episode I really wanted to get into my terraforming project for this area, which is inspired by the Black Garden in Destiny. Check out episode 9 for a better explanation, but these are supposed to be weird and alien ruins. So let me know what you think about our first 1000 days in this survival series. While I wouldn't say it's the most impressive 1000 days, hopefully it offers some inspiration for those of you seeking. If you enjoyed this video and you really want to help me out, the best thing you could do for YouTube is to immediately watch another one of my videos. So I'll make it easy for you and put a playlist on the end screen. Thanks for being here and we'll see you in the next episode.